welcome to this week's edition of the Youth Leader Hangout. I'm Russell Martin, your host, and this week we have Eric Pugh, and today we're talking about youth leadership teams, how we kind of do that. So I'm going to let him kind of go through that. He has some slides from a talk that he's going to share with us. And then if you come on and you want to ask any questions, put those in comments or put those on the blog comments or whatever, and that way we can also, I will pass those on and we can get those later. But first of all, welcome.
All right. Good morning. How are you guys this morning? As Russell said, my name is Eric Pugh, and I serve at Strawbridge United Methodist Church here in Kingwood. I just started my appointment this summer. I've been in youth ministry for 11 years full-time now, and I was just commissioned as a deacon in the church. Have no plans on leaving student ministry or young adult ministry, and part of the reason that I've been asked to do this is I believe in student leadership and the power that is associated with building up young people in ministry. So that's kind of who I am. Leadership is important to what I do. Everywhere I've been, we've had student leadership, and so just going to talk a little bit about the importance of student leadership this morning, and why you need that in your ministry as well. So jump over and share my screen with you guys. And so essentially, youth leadership for me is about encouraging, engaging, equipping, empowering, and emancipating young people to be the people that God has made them to be. We need young people in the church today to take their role in leadership, and we need to help them do that now, and we need to stop telling them that they're the church of the future. The reality is they're the church of today, and we need to prepare them to begin to lead that way. Simply put, why do you need youth leadership? Well, hopefully if you're watching this, you serve in youth ministry. And if you serve in youth ministry, then you need youth leadership. One of the best books I read in seminary actually was called Youth in the Community of Disciples. I don't believe it's in print any longer, but you can still find it. And one of my favorite quotes from that book said this: "Youth ministry must always be ministry with youth, which calls youth to join with adults in ministering to each other and the world. There is no way to do youth ministry without youth involvement and planning." I don't think I could have put that any better, that we are in ministry with youth. We don't minister just to youth. We need to invite youth along in this ministry process, and we need to invite them to be a part of the planning and the discernment process as we together figure out how God is calling us to serve the communities that we are in. A couple of the scriptures that just kind of stick with me every time I think about student leadership are Proverbs 22:6. "Train children in the right way. When they are old, they will not stray." And then one of my life verses is Mark 1:17. "And Jesus said to them, 'Come with me, and I will teach you how to bring in people instead of fish.'" And I think those two scriptures for me set the stage and the foundation of my call to ministry of empowering students in leadership. And so leadership is sometimes, I think, something that gets incorrectly defined. So for me, let's go with what leadership isn't. Leadership is not simply a position. It is not power, pride, or ego. Leadership is not about using, abusing, or trafficking others to get your way. Sometimes in our culture today, those are the things that we see people in roles of leadership doing, and how leadership is defined in our culture. But leadership is so much more than that. It is really relational. It is invitational. It is vocational, and it is inspirational. And I think when leadership takes on those four qualities of relating to one another, of inviting others to be a part of it, of helping those who are in the group understand who they are and what they have been called and made to do, and then sending them out, inspiring them to do those things, is when real leadership happens. And so I want to take a look at those kind of four areas this morning, and what that means for me. First of all, let's look at leadership is relational. It's not about titles or positions or flowcharts. Leadership is really about one life influencing another. John Maxwell has done a lot of work in the area of leadership, especially within the church, and he's got a lot of good things to say. So let's go all the way back to why you need youth in leadership or youth leadership. You're in youth ministry. I pray that the ministry that you're in is a relational ministry at its core, that you are able to relate with students. Part of unearthing leadership with young people is reminding them that leadership is open to everyone. So when I talk with churches about what that means, what I essentially say is, if you have some sort of election process for students into a leadership in your church, that's a popularity contest, and that's not helpful. Not in my opinion. I don't think voting people into positions of authority is really what leadership in the church is all about. Jesus didn't have a vote when he went along the seashore and invited fishermen to come and follow him. There was no vote. There was simply an invitation to be in a relationship. He invites them. He says, "Come with me. I will teach you." And so we need to remind all of the students in our ministries that leadership within the church is open to everyone. I believe that leadership is a learned skill, that leadership, while there are some of us who have better ability to speak or to be out in front of people, that doesn't always make us the best leaders. Leadership is really a skill that is learned. And it's not just a skill, it's a set of skills that allows us to live into our giftedness to really help other people be the people that they are made to be. And because leadership is learned and it's open to everyone, the other part is that leadership takes time. Relationships take time. You're not going to find too many folks who are ready just to take over and begin to live into their giftedness, because let's be honest, guys, most of the students that we work with don't even realize their giftedness. They don't even realize what they have or what they're capable of, because most of the time the world is telling them what they aren't good at or not able to do versus the opposite. And so leadership as a relational thing means that you need to spend time developing this with students. I think this is pretty easily seen again in Mark 1:17, where Jesus gives the invitation, "Come with me, I will teach you." He offers them to come. There's an open invitation. It's an open invitation to learn, and teaching takes time. Just imagine yourself as a fisherman, knowing one particular way of doing something, and all of a sudden someone comes along and says, "Hey, I'm going to teach you a new way of doing something." Most of us wouldn't get that overnight. And so beginning the process of developing student leaders and a leadership team is something that you need to think about, take a little bit of time and figure out how you are going to invite students into that process. For me, one of the ways that I invite students into that process is actually through applications. I create a very simple application process that helps me know a little bit more about the student, about the time commitment that they have available, why they want to be in student leadership, so that we can then have further conversations and discussions. Typically, we allow the application, we open it up, put it out. It's usually a one page of paper, front and back, with some very open-ended questions. And we give them about 4 weeks to fill it out and get it back. A lot of them get it back really quickly. As a part of that, we ask for them to come in and do a face-to-face interview. If we're going to be working together and leading together, we need to get to help our students prepare to do the things in life and in the real world that are coming at them fast and furious. And so some of what that does for me is that tends to take out some of the students who just want to do it because it's a popular thing to do. And I encourage every student to turn in an application. I encourage them that the interview process is not mean or unkind, that it is really just an opportunity for us to have conversation. I bring in some of our other pastoral leaders and some of the other adult youth workers, and we just kind of go through their applications, reviewing their answers and asking them to tell us a little bit more about their answers in that process. And so through that, we are showing them that leadership, it takes time, that we want to be there with them, that we want to learn more about them. And then we spend some time in prayer and discernment about who we believe God is calling at this particular moment in time to serve in leadership. And so that's kind of how we start that process. And we want them from the very beginning to know that leadership is a relational thing, and we want to get to know them deeper, and not just, hey, Johnny's great at basketball, or Susie's really kind to everyone. We really want to know about where they are in their faith. Let them ask questions of us about how we can help them in the process, and how this leadership is going to challenge them, and really kind of set the stage for going deeper. Like I said, leadership is invitational. If you don't have a youth leadership team or council, you need to start one. Kendra Creasy Dean and Ron Foster, in their book, The God-Bearing Life, said inviting youth to assume significant leadership rather than being elected to nice-sounding offices powerfully affirms their gifts. I wholeheartedly believe that. Our students that we work with are some of the most talented people in the world. And when we set the bar low, they're going to give us what we ask for. But when we set a high bar and we invite them into a process that allows them to assume significant leadership, they're going to rise to that occasion. Well, what does it mean, significant leadership? For me, in the ministry that I do, that means I ask for students to help in the planning of our weekly youth fellowship. I ask for their participation in the planning and implementation of our summer missions. And part of that, in both of those processes, involves opening up the budget to our students, and talking about how we form a budget for the year, how we're spending our money, because that leads into a great conversation about stewardship. It also opens our students' eyes to realize how much money is spent on each activity, and then you empower them to make choices about how that money is utilized, or best utilized, in the context of the ministry that you guys are called to serve. And so you invite them deeper from just a surface level of, oh, what are your favorite games, to let's really dig into this, because these are life skills that our students need to be able to develop and need to be able to use. And so we invite them in, and not only do we invite them to be a part of the team, we invite them to make real decisions. We empower them. So we're empowering them, we believe in them, and at the same time, it affirms that they have the ability to do these things. And I have seen some really amazing things come out of this part of student leadership. When you begin to tell them and remind them that they can make good decisions and they can make good choices, they oftentimes surprise me with some very unique ways of coming about and doing ministry together in new and life-giving ways. And part of that is because they begin to realize that leadership is vocational. Everyone has a desire to add value to the world in some way. And anyone can really learn to be a leader. We are called to share our knowledge with others. And the young people that we serve, they know this, and they want this opportunity, and they're often hungry to offer their lives in a world to make a difference. And if you, like me, are working with young people on a regular basis, you know that. You know that young people want to make a difference in the world today. And part of that for me is helping them understand that leadership is vocational, that God has called us through Christ. He says, come with me, and I will teach you how to bring in people instead of fish. That this way of living, that this is no longer just a job, but it's about who we are at our core. It's about knowing who we are and whose we are. And so through this part of leadership with the students, we work in devotional components that help encourage our students to remember that they are made in God's image, that God has uniquely equipped them for a calling in their life. We talk about the fact that not all leaders look or act the same, and actually that there are lots of different ways in which people lead. We have people who lead out front who are very vocal. We have people who lead behind the scenes who are very good with numbers and details and making sure that things are planned out correctly. We have people who lead by being able to be very caring about others in the group and making sure that people are brought in, that they are connected, and that they are cared for. And then there are people who lead by literally getting the job done. And you probably know some of those people that you give them a task and they go get it done, and they're really excited about that. And I think all of those different ways speak to the ways in which we have been uniquely made. That God has called each of us to be a part of this life-giving opportunity to learn, to follow, and then to go out and bring in others to repeat that process. And so leadership is really something that we do all the time throughout our entire life. It is a part of our calling to share the gospel and to do that in the ways in which we are each uniquely gifted to do that. And that's not the same for everyone. And unfortunately, sometimes in our culture, or many times in our culture, leadership falls to certain particular individuals because they have different styles that our community is looking for. They're loud or boisterous, or they're very able to get the job done. And often those come at the lack of relationships or the lack of possibly specific details, and things get overlooked. And so affirming our students that they have a value to the team and making sure that you create a team that represents those different styles is important, so that they can see that there are ways for them to serve in the church. And then the last area is that leadership is inspirational. As we move from this relational and invitation and vocation, we got to inspire them to do these things that they have been called to do. And so for me, Alan Nelson put it really well in his book, Me to We, about, for me, leadership and student leadership is about delegating ministry, not abdicating my responsibility, but preparing others to use their gifts. For me, student leadership is about inviting students that I am in ministry with to take a hold of the ministry that they have been called to, and then preparing them to use those gifts and live out their giftedness. And it's not about me just giving away my responsibility. Rather, it's about inviting others to be a part of the process so that more hands can be a part of it. And then equipping is the spiritual process of helping people discover their divine purpose and strength. And so all of this, I think, for me, comes together, and it helps students click that God has really called them for a unique purpose in the world, and that they have a place. And I think when you and I are reminded that we have a place in the world and that we have value, and that we have value to add not only to the world, but to the kingdom building process, that we are inspired to go out and share that with others. And so those are for me, the key points of leadership.